The pain itself in the hospital was, I would have told you before that surgery that I lived at a 9 or a 10. I didn't have a clue that it could be so much worse. I was like, oh, I thought I knew pain. Just kidding. This is a pain I didn't know was possible.
So when I opened the door to welcome today's guest, Ruthie Lindsay, I literally was greeted with a ray of light, a sort of a human a human bundle of joy and lightness, which is pretty incredible considering that along with all of that joy and radiance and beautiful service and sense of just love, she lives in constant pain, physical pain that is progressively getting worse every year. When she was 16 years old, after living what she would describe as a pretty charmed life, she was in a car accident that left her in a hospital for a month with a rewired upper spine. Everything seemed to be going along fine until about 5-6 years later, when everything fell apart and her world was turned upside down yet again. How she's coped with that, what actually happened, how it sent her into a very dark place for many years, and the decision that she made and the trigger that it would take to have her respond profoundly differently to a pain that, as we sat and had a conversation, still was very much a part of her everyday, every moment experience. It was something that rattled me, that inspired me, that endeared me, and that gave me hope that we can experience pain and suffering, as all of us either have or currently are or at some point will, and still live a deeply connected, meaningful, and potentially even joyful life. So excited to share this conversation with you. I'm Jonathan Fields, and this is Good Life Project. So if you like this podcast, probably a pretty safe bet that you're always on the hunt for other interesting podcasts to listen to. And our partner network, Wondery, actually has some great options to dive into. Great shows like The Simple Show with my friend Tish Oxenrider really is awesome, relevant conversations about how to live well and live simply. One of my new favorites too is Launch with John August. If you have a book in you, or you've ever wondered what it's like to actually take a book from idea to soul to printed behind the scenes, it's really fascinating real-time exploration of that process. And if you're into stuff like true crime series, Dirty John, I admit to completely binge listening to the entire series. So to find them all, just head over to apple.co/Wondery. That's apple.co/Wondery. Or if you're one of those Android folks, head to Wondery.fm. That's Wondery.fm.
I was a really sweet, good kid. I made friends really easily and things came just pretty naturally. I had a hard time in school, but not socially. I don't know, there's been so much coming out lately about, I've been watching some documentaries with friends and dealing with bullies. And I just watched Dear Evan Hansen and I was weeping, but that was never my experience. I don't have, and people think that I probably would have been because I'm 6 feet tall and I've been this height since I was 13, but I wasn't picked on. And so I never had, things just came really easily. Socially, I made friends really easily. I was just a really good kid and really happy, but also pretty surfacey, and I needed people to like me and I wanted to be liked by everyone. And that kind of drove me. And so I was just a happy little moral kid.
All right. You threw in that word moral at the end.
Well, it's funny because I was most of my friends were really wild and they, started having sex really early and started doing drugs and drinking a lot. And I had the fear of God and my dad of getting in trouble. The idea of getting in trouble was my worst nightmare, or disappointing anyone. But then I also really loved that people looked up to me and it made me different, that I was the only one that wasn't, So I liked feeling special. I liked feeling like the only one. I liked being looked up to. So it wasn't I had this moral high ground because I had this deep conviction for something. It was more of just, I liked to be different and I wasn't interested in those things. I had more fun than most people and I was never drinking, and I was it made them act so silly. And I watched it and then everyone was so dramatic about boys and all the other things. And that did not interest me at all. I had no desire to be involved in that. So yeah, it was just my natural, thing. And then
But you still felt, it seems like you felt really accepted though as a kid.
I did. I felt very cared for. I mean, I realize now as an adult what a gift it was. I never went a day without knowing how loved, and not just loved, but like treasured. I felt treasured. I slept in my oldest brother's room till he graduated high school. He was so incredible to me and loved me so well. And like, he was like the cool kid. He's like 7 years older than me. And I would go find him. We went to this tiny, tiny school. I did until 8th grade. He graduated there. And I would go find him every lunch break and go sit in his lap. And like, I'd make, signs for his locker. And he just, loved me so, so well. And so did, all the men in my life did, So it was just, I didn't realize that that's not everyone's experience. And it's so the exception, And I just felt treasured. I don't know. It was such a gift they gave me of just knowing my worth and knowing it had more to do with than anything. Like, so many women feel like their appearance is all they have to offer. And that's such a hard thing, and that wasn't like what I was praised for by the men in my life. It was just, they just valued like my opinion, and, we could just laugh about so many things, and they would compliment me on things that didn't have anything to do with how I looked, or I don't know. I just feel like it was a very unique gift that I was given in my home,
It sounds like almost, I hate to use the word charmed, but it sounds like a charmed childhood.
We had our stuff just like everyone else, but for the most part, like, it was just a really sweet existence. And I was delusional enough to think that other people had the same sort of experience as me. And I just thought people were genuinely just happy and they had a good life. And, they got to go home to a house that they felt excited to go home to, and they felt really loved. And I obviously didn't have a freaking clue about the world at all. But I was just living in kind of a surfacey, light, happy existence. And I felt a lot of like favor, which feels weird to even say, but things just came really naturally. Like, I was loved easily and I made friends easily, and things just kind of happened in a really sweet way. They just would kind of land in my lap, And so I don't think I was really, it was interesting when hard things did start happening. I had a lot of entitlement around pain and suffering and hard things, because I don't think I was really taught or I never had learned how to suffer well or what it looks like. I was kind of shielded from a lot of that kind of stuff. And so I didn't know how to do it at all. I failed miserably at suffering for a long time.
Does anybody really know how to do it until you actually, I think it's one of those things where you can watch documentaries, you can read books, you can see other people's suffering for various different reasons on various levels. But unless and until you experience it yourself, which at some point in life we all will, there's no DNA deep understanding of what it is and how to navigate it. So let's explore, because you're living this beautiful life. High school, like a senior year, everything changes.
Yeah. So my senior year, I had organized a group of people to go into Baton Rouge for like a hang to Celebration Station. And we had stopped at a gas station. Everyone else had gone inside to get alcohol. I didn't drink, so I just was waiting, and I didn't know how to get to where we were going because I have the absolute worst sense of direction in life. And I was the last car. And so I was trying to keep up with everyone, and I pulled out on a major highway in front of an ambulance, and he hit me on my car door going about 65. And I broke 3 ribs. They punctured my lungs collapsed, my spleen ruptured, and then I broke C1 and C2, which are the very top 2 vertebrae in your neck.
Right in your skull.
Yeah. And they're like at your brainstem, basically. And so
were you unconscious at this point?
I don't remember any of it. What we do know is the ambulance driver saved my life. I had a 5% chance to live and a 1% chance to walk with my particular break. But if it had not been an ambulance driver, I wouldn't be here. Like, he knew how to stabilize my neck, get me breathing again without hurting. Like, if someone had just tried to pull me out of the car to get me breathing again without stabilizing my neck first, like, I would be brain dead or paralyzed, And so I was just... You
were in a caravan with a whole bunch of other friends at that point too, but you were the last car.
I was the last car, so
Did they
one
know
saw
what
it.
happened?
Mm-mm. But my best friend in high school was in the car with me, and my car door ended up in the passenger seat, and he was not touched, and he helped the ambulance driver save my life. I know. If I had hurt either of them, because it was my fault, I just think about how different my world would be today,
In terms of just your sense of responsibility?
Yeah.
Or?
And just, I think that you can't walk away from killing someone without being deeply, deeply affected by that. And that changing the lens in which you see the world, that you've, experienced such. I experience a lot of pain daily because of that accident, but it just affects me, and if it were affecting someone else, or if my actions had done that to someone, I don't know. I just think that I'd be different today.
Yeah, I would imagine. So you wake up in the hospital.
Yeah.
How long were you?
I was in the hospital about a month. I was on life support for a while. I don't remember a whole lot from the hospital. Interesting getting, takes from other people. I think at the time it was way harder for everyone else than it was for me. It was way harder for my family and friends. I was doped up on every drug under the sun and on life support, didn't know what the hell was happening, but they were aware of everything.
Have you talked to them, especially your parents, about how they experienced that month?
Yeah, it was really traumatizing, especially, my dad could barely spend time there. It just upset him so much to see me suffering. And my mom never left the hospital. She slept with my room with me every night while I was there. Yeah, and then they said, it's interesting because I don't remember any of this, but my hands were chained down and I was on life support in ICU. And my mom said that every time, and this was a subconscious thing, but that every time someone would come in the room and that I was alert enough to realize it, that I would hold my hands up so that I could hold their hands, and that I would smile. It was I was trying to host or greet them, and I would smile. You could see me smiling with my eyes in my mouth, even though I was on life support. And it's just interesting that I don't know, that was just something in me, because I don't remember it. I don't know anything about that time other than I don't know. I just wanted other people to feel okay in that space, because I could tell, I would wake up, I remember, and I would see people crying over me. And I'm just I didn't understand what was going on, But I don't ever remember waking up feeling super panicked or scared, or I don't know.
Do you remember when you first really woke up from this?
I don't have a specific memory. My friend Brian told me that one of the first words he heard me say was when I was in I don't know if it was the MRI or the CAT scan, and I'm a little claustrophobic. And he said that my first words were, "Excuse me, I'm very uncomfortable in here." Where now I'd be like, "Get me the fuck out of here." I was polite and sweet, which is just so funny. I was a lot sweeter then, I think. And I think I'm kinder now, but I was sweet, it's just funny. I don't know.
So you emerged from that.
Super lucky. Back then when I did my neck surgery, they took bone out of my hip and fused it with wire. They wrapped it around my neck. And I was so lucky. I was young and I had youth and health and all those things on my side. And so I just kind of went back to life as normal, and I didn't have any real residual effects at the time. I wore a neck brace for 6 months. I graduated high school on time. Actually, the rec, we're about to come up on the anniversary, which was my dad's birthday. And I literally went back to school after Christmas, graduated on time, went to college, had the best time. By looking at me, you'd never know. All my scars are hidden from clothing and my hair. And if I dance too much, I might get sore. But otherwise, I didn't have any real effects of it. And
so it's life just went on.
Yeah, life went on. And sometimes I would tell the story. It was almost like I was talking about it in third person because it hadn't affected my life really yet, and it was just a cool story. And I love telling stories. So I could tell it very disconnected from it, like it happened to someone else. And because it, at the time, it didn't change anything in my life. It was just a really interesting story to tell, until I guess, so I got a job in Nashville right out of school, and I had the best time. And it was I met all these amazing people. I didn't know anyone when I moved there. And about a year.
You got married somewhere in there.
Yeah,
also,
about a year into it, I met my first boyfriend. And my parents were so stoked because they thought I liked girls. I was I wish that he was a boy. They were real excited about it. And we got married 10 months after we met. We're guilty Christians feeling shame about sex. And we were just idiots and knew nothing about marriage or what that meant or what that actually looked like. But we were also just really hopeful. And, things had always worked out. So I just assumed life was going to be great. And we bought a house and we were living in the neighborhood I still live in now. And just were like, life's going to be so good. We'll start having kids in a few years. And he is a musician. We went on tour and life was really exciting, because I didn't have a clue about life yet. And then about a year into our marriage, one day I was walking in front of this Starbucks and Smoothie King, and I had this shooting pain go up my neck, and I didn't know what it was, but it literally dropped me to my knees, and I blacked out for a second, and then I felt like I was going to vomit, and then I was left with this searing migraine headache that wouldn't go away.
Had you ever felt anything like that before?
This was the first time I'd ever felt it, and it scared me to death, truly scared me to death. And so it started happening more and more frequently. And so I started this very long process of going to so many different doctors. And every time the neurologist or the orthopedic surgeon would see me, they'd have me do, and I always forget if it's the MRI or a CAT scan, but this black spot would come back on my films, and they would look at everything and they'd be like, oh, that's just the magnet in the machine interacting with the wire from your fusion. But everything around it looks fine. We started a ton of different therapies. Nothing helped, but I was desperate.
Had this become a regular pain at that point, or was it recurring?
It was becoming more and more regular. At first it was more sporadic, and then slowly just started happening more and more and more often. And I became less and less functional as, it became more and more frequent. And then, therapies were not working. So then they started me on pain medication. And
so they're just kind of surrender to the fact that we can't figure it out. Let's just try and
or they just were like, you had trauma on your body. So this is kind of your pain setting in. This is going to be a part of your life. Let's learn how to, let's try things, but then it would always come around to we just have to learn how to manage it.
And there was never a clearly identified, that's what it is.
Exactly.
How are you with that prognosis?
I think I was too scared to go any deeper than that. I don't know. I felt pretty paralyzed and traumatized. And I didn't even realize I had a lot of PTSD around hospitals.
From the original?
Yeah. Even just going to a doctor, the smell of a hospital, because it's weird because it was such a faint, it was, but I had not had any reason to go to the doctor or the hospital after my wreck until this point. And so I would get really panicky every time we go. And it began this very long downward spiraling road that took years to recover from. But I became less and less functional, and they started giving me more and more medication. And I was so desperate to not hurt all the time that I took absolutely everything they recommended, because I was just panicked.
Were you able to work at that point, or?
I was at first, but then everything just gradually shut down. I worked for probably 2.5 more years, but then I was also working. It was a very flexible job, and my boss was the most amazing. And, so I was able to be way more flexible, and they were great about if I couldn't do things that I didn't, But I eventually stopped working, and there was more reasons than just my pain why I was working at a church, and there was a lot of gross stuff happening there. But I eventually just was living in my bed. Full time for the most part, not functional at all. Pain became my defining role. And I've now looking back, it's such an interesting thing to be able to look back. Pain became who I defined myself as, and because we teach people how to see us, that's how everyone else saw me, And so I couldn't see someone without them being like, how are you doing? Are you okay? And in this really probably gross subconscious way, I found a lot of comfort in that sympathy, because it also just kind of justified my lifestyle of being a terrible wife and a bad friend and not working and, not adding anything. People didn't expect anything of me anymore.
And also at the same time, it sounds like you're on a lot of pain medication, which also completely alters who you are.
Yeah. Because it was so gradual, I didn't realize I was becoming more and more of a shadow of myself. And it's interesting because no one in that time, if they met me, were ever she's doped. I never abused it. I wasn't and because it was such a gradual buildup, your body becomes more and more accustomed to it. So you would have never once seen me and been like, whoa, she has a problem, Because like I laugh now if my personality is like, I live at like a 9 because I'm over the top. Like it probably made me like a 5, which that's normal, So it just kind of numbed my normal, like the light wasn't there anymore, and I wasn't excitable, and I was numb to everything, So I was just like, I was still pleasant. I was never mean. I was never angry. I never like got vicious with anyone on these drugs, but I was just a shadow.
Good Life Project is supported by HelloFresh, which is a meal kit delivery service that shops and plans and delivers your favorite step-by-step recipes and pre-measured ingredients so you can just cook and eat and enjoy, which are 3 things I kind of like to do. You choose your delivery day. You can pause your account if you're traveling, and everything comes, it's all pre-measured and labeled, and it just makes it super easy. They have a great selection too. They have 3 plans to choose from: classic, veggie, and family, to really pretty much accommodate everybody. I also really love the fact that they're balanced meals, and it comes out to less than $10 a meal, which is not the easiest thing to find for good food these days. I had the other night the Carolina barbecue chicken, which was super delicious, which is kind of interesting for me because I'm pretty selective when it comes to sort of barbecue flavored things, and I really like the sauce that they put together for this. Anyway, as a Good Life Project listener, you can get $30 off your first week of HelloFresh. Just visit HelloFresh.com and enter the promo code GoodLife30. So that's HelloFresh.com, promo code GoodLife30 for $30 off your first week of HelloFresh. So I love partnering with brands that help make life easier, safer, and more convenient. And Ring is actually a great example of this. They have completely reimagined an age-old technology, the doorbell, by adding in video, audio, and mobile to make things so much better. We've actually got the Ring video doorbell. And what's so cool about it is that when someone rings the front doorbell, you get an instant mobile alert, and then you can see the video on your phone no matter where you are. You can talk to them from your phone, even if you're not home. What's really interesting too for me is that even living in an apartment in the city, it's super helpful. So we've learned that you're never really entirely sure who's going to end up at your door. When our daughter is home alone and she does things like order food, we can actually monitor what's happening, and that makes us feel better. And what's also cool is that if you're waiting for a delivery or something and you're out, you'll know when it arrives, and you can even speak to the delivery person if you want and let them know, like where to leave it if there's somewhere specific. And for homeowners, they've got a very cool new offering, the Ring Floodlight Cam, that bundles a motion-controlled floodlight and camera, so you can see exactly what's going on outside your home, even in the dark, even when you're far away, and you can see and speak to anyone you see and even trigger an alarm if you want. This is just a smart reimagining of something we all use every day to help make our lives safer, easier, and just plain better. And as a Good Life Project listener, you can save up to $150 off a Ring security kit when you go to ring.com/goodlife. Ring.com/goodlife. That's ring.com/goodlife. What was your thinking? What was your internal thought process about the pain in your life with the pain, like while you were going through that?
It was so dark. It felt so hopeless, and it just became more and more hopeless. There were times where I was totally panicked by it. There were times where I was just completely shut down and numb about it. And then the other time, it was mostly just depressing. Like, felt so depressing. Like, I just remember I would lay there. We put black, garbage bags on the window because I didn't sleep much. I couldn't sleep because I wasn't doing anything. So, of course, I wasn't sleeping because I was just not tired. I just laid in bed all day. So we put black garbage bags on the window so light wouldn't come in the day. And I would just lay there each day and be like, man, people are out like living their life. I would look on like Facebook and like, I wish I was out playing with my children and not laying here hurting every second of every day and being miserable, and I felt really sorry for myself, and I felt really scared and really hopeless.
Yeah. It sounds like you're super close with your family. Mm-hmm. Were they aware of what was going on during this window, or were you kind of shielding them?
They definitely had access, but not the full story. Like, I didn't.
Because you had moved away. Also,
right. Oh, yeah. I lived 10 hours away. And I know they were definitely concerned, for sure concerned. But they didn't know. I kind of felt freedom, like when my husband would tour, because then I wouldn't feel guilty about staying in my bed, So I think pain can make you check out, isolate, withdraw. So I had just done that, but could keep up. Like I could show up somewhere and do what I needed to do and then leave and go get straight back in my bed. And no one knew to the extent of how much time I was living in my bed, So they were concerned though, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like in addition to the pain and to the whatever effects the drugs had, that you were, a lot of the symptoms you're talking about also would really be consistent with like a deep depression, clinical depression.
Oh, yeah. I definitely had situational, depression. I was on depression medication and I was on literally a bag filled with drugs. I was on everything that they ever recommended. And I was desperate to the max. And so I never questioned any of it. And I never questioned to see what was under that black spot. I think I was pretty paralyzed in most ways, and that whole thing just kept getting worse and worse. And that went on for 4.5 years or so. This just trajectory of living in my bed more and more and more and becoming less and less functional and going darker and darker in my depression and pain getting worse and worse. And finally, my mother-in-law at the time was like, I can't, I know it's really expensive to go see these doctors. I know you've seen a ton. I know they've all said the same thing, but it can't hurt to see one more and I'll pay for it. So I was in my head, I'm like, bless her heart. They're going to say the same thing, but she's so sweet. So sure, And so I went to this one more doctor and brought all these films and he was like, I can't tell you what's going on until I see what's under that black spot. And in my head, I was like, oh, right. That makes so much sense. But I don't know if subconsciously I didn't even really want to know. I don't know. But basically I got this phone call. He had me do a $50 x-ray. And I got this
And that had never been done before?
No, never done. And basically this stoic sounding, very monotone man leaves me the most frantic sounding voicemail and wanted me to come right back to the doctor's office. And basically what we found out is one of the wires from my spinal cord fusion had broken and pierced into my brainstem. And he was like, basically no one had ever seen that before or heard of that. They're like, you should be paralyzed already. If you don't get it out, you will be. But surgery itself was incredibly high risk of paralysis. And I was terrified, mortified, terrified, just horrified. I wanted to just crawl in a ball in the fetal position and go away because it just scared me. I was paralyzed.
Right. So it's sort of here are your options. Pick the least worst of them.
Yeah. You have to have this surgery because if you don't, you'll be paralyzed. But you might not come out of it walking. And no one had ever done the surgery. So it's not like you can go off experience with a doctor that knows what's happening because no one's ever seen this before, And so then it was just this crazy season of life. I went home, I was scared to death. And a few weeks later, my dad, who we call Papa, he had told my mom and my godfather he's going to come see me and tell me that he would sell our farm so I could have this surgery because insurance, it was a pre-existing injury and they would not cover it.
So that was added to, so for you, you're okay, so you're paralyzed without it. You may be paralyzed with it.
Right.
And even if you can have it, I'm guessing it's extremely expensive and you have no insurance to cover it.
Right. And so, and just my pain in general up to that point had cost us money we didn't have, so that also, that financial stress had been huge throughout our whole marriage. And so my dad, on his way the night before he was coming to see me, actually had this freak accident and ended up falling down a flight of stairs. And he ended up passing a brain damage. And they brought him because he was on his way to Nashville. And so they ended up bringing him to Vanderbilt. And we knew that he wasn't going to make it, but we kept him on life support overnight so that my brothers and my mom could get there with me to take him off. And it was such a massive loss, not just for my family, but just for our community as a whole. He was one of the most special, every time when he'd leave my brothers and my presence when we were kids, he'd say, I love you so much. Remember your manners and always look out for the little guy. And that's what he did. He wanted us to love people that others might miss, and love them and enter in. And so in the midst of this like awful, massive nightmare of a season and just traumatic, awful loss, my godfather ended up setting up this medical fund in my dad's honor for me to be able to have this surgery because he knew that that was his last, that's what he was coming to tell me. And the most beautiful thing happened. Like people started sending me checks with notes and being like, your dad bought my prom dress. Your dad sent me on my senior trip. Your dad paid my rent. Your dad sent me to school. Your dad fixed my, just on and on and on. And we always like had kids living with us. So I saw his generosity all the time, but just, it was the sweetest, most beautiful picture of who he was, and it was crazy because like he still ended up taking care of me. And because of the way he had loved people, I was able to have this surgery, but it was just in the midst. I remember I would like lay in my bed at night. I couldn't sleep and I would just pinch myself until I'd draw blood, literally. And I was just like, I am in a nightmare. Like this cannot be real, like I'm going to wake up because this can't be real. And I just couldn't imagine a world that my dad didn't exist in, And you hear people talk about this, like when life gets back to normal, but I just would look at people like I'd sit at a restaurant or something, and I would look at people just going about their lives. And I wanted to like scream at the top of my lungs and be like, don't you know that the world just changed so drastically? Like the brightest, most special man isn't here anymore and you're going about your life. Like it was just, my life changed so drastically but life goes on, and it was hard to imagine life going on. I couldn't imagine it. I wanted to crawl in a ball and just it be over, It was just a dark season. And I guess the one positive thing about having like a freak medical condition is doctors are like chomping at the bit to work on you because they like get off on that shit. And so I was like pursued, a lot of doctors wanted to do this surgery. And I ended up choosing the Mayo Clinic, and this like top neurologist, top orthopedic surgeon ended up doing it together. And it was like a 12-hour surgery. And they ended up taking the wire out and then taking bone from my other hip and then fusing it with titanium screws. And like, they hoped going into it that it would help with my pain, but they were like, if we don't do the surgery, you won't be walking. So that's the goal, for you to be walking.
But there was no guarantee that the pain would go away.
And so what was so interesting, the pain itself in the hospital was, I would have told you before that surgery that I lived at a 9 or a 10. I didn't have a clue that it could be so much worse. Like, I was like, oh, I thought I knew pain. Just kidding. Like, this is a pain I didn't know was possible. It was just intense on a level I didn't know I was capable of feeling. And I just wanted my dad. But I came out screaming, like with nothing coming out, because when you're on life support and they take the chest tube out, you can't speak. And so I was like busting blood vessels in my eyes from screaming with no sound coming out, and just like clawing. It was so scary and so awful. But I remember instantly like feeling my legs and I could feel them, so I was so thankful. But I was also traumatized by the amount of pain I was in. So I was at Mayo for a little while, and it was interesting because at first it was just such intense pain. So you don't know for a while what you're going to settle into, what kind of pain you're going to have once the surgery pain goes away, know?
Because you don't know what's traumatic versus chronic.
So it took a while. I would say it took like a month or maybe 2 months before the residual what's left pain showed up. And what basically ended up happening is the shooting pain stopped, but then I ended up getting such severe nerve damage that my entire right side just feels like it's on fire at all times. And I guess the best way I know how to describe it is like one time my right foot was standing in fire ants or red ants, and I didn't know it. My brother like yelled at me to move, and I just had so many red ant bites all the way up my leg. And I didn't know because that's just what it, feels like all the time. And so I would say I left there on even more medication, and I went into an even darker spiral because then I knew it wasn't just a seasonal thing. I'm like, this is going to be my forever. Like and that felt so hopeless and so depressing to me. And I went straight back to living in my bed and being a total nightmare, like not functional at all and being consumed with pain, And it just kind of went darker and darker and got darker and darker and darker. And I could tell my husband was checking out, and he ended up, he was on tour most of the time, and I became less and less functional. And I ended up catching this crazy bacterial infection actually while I was in surgery for endometriosis. I had a small surgery for that. And I got so sick. Like I kept ending up in the emergency room, but my husband was on tour and like friends would have to take me because I couldn't take care of myself. Like at all. And I ended up hitting a wall that was so much greater than I knew. I didn't know it was possible for me to go that low, and that I was capable of being that big of a nightmare. Like I was not functional. I stopped sleeping. I mean, I would stare off into the distance. I couldn't think straight. I mean, I had a complete full-on nervous breakdown. Like my family came and got me. I moved back in with my oldest brother into their home. It was the darkest, scariest, most traumatic time of my life. And I would just lay there having panic attacks all night long. And the thought of like not being on the earth anymore was like, that sounded like such a relief. I did not want to wake up. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be alive because I was miserable and I was not functional. And I never experienced shame on that level. I'd always just been such a good kid. And I felt so embarrassed and ashamed of myself that I was that big of a nightmare and that I couldn't take care of myself and that my family had to take care of me. And I just felt like I was a disappointment. And I literally went down a spiraling darkness that I didn't know I was even capable of. And my family was terrified also. And basically they came to the conclusion that they needed to like send me away for help. And I think they were going to send me to Johns Hopkins. And that scared me on such a deep fear level that literally the next day out of fear, I started weaning myself off of the drugs because I did not want to get sent away.
Sent away as in sort of like an institution?
Yeah, like a treatment facility.
Right, where it's like residential.
Yeah, and that they could deal with like the drugs and pain and how to manage pain.
Because your family must have at that point just been, I mean, in essentially living their own hell too, being so close to you and trying to, feeling kind of helpless to a certain extent.
And I wasn't even there anymore. Like I was not there. I was gone. And that idea of being shipped away, like literally scared me and terrified me into a panic so deeply that I was like, they are not sending me away. And so the next day, literally, I just started cutting everything, and
what was the goal though? I mean,
to not be on the drugs and not get sent away. That was it. That was literally my only goal.
But at that time, did you also think to yourself, okay, so I'll be off the drugs, so I'll be a little more functional, but the drugs are what's keeping the pain from being.
I didn't even think that it would make me more functional. I couldn't think straight about anything. The thinking came after weeks of weaning. Like literally, it was all motivated by fear. And it was the best decision I ever made in my life.
It was like this is one single thing that I can do to reclaim some, the smallest sense of agency or control.
Yes. And exactly. And that decision, I mean, it ended up taking me 4 months to wean myself off of everything. But within, I would say a month, my mind started feeling like me again that I didn't realize was gone.
Did your family know that you were doing this?
Yes.
And was that what stopped them from?
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. And there was movement. Up to that point, there was no movement. I was just paralyzed by pain and fear and darkness and panic attacks, And so there needed to be some sort of movement one way or the other. And so this was like a movement in the right direction. So they let me stay there, And so I would say about a month in or a few weeks in, I made a list that I would scratch off of like, I had to truly had to relearn how to live. It was like at 8 a.m., you get up and you put your feet on the ground and you make the bed, and you're not allowed to get in it again until it's dark outside. And then I would write down it was just like such basic stuff. Like at 8:15, you take a bath and brush your teeth. And I would scratch it off and feel like I'd done something productive that day, And I had to do that throughout the day. And I would scratch the most, literally eat a cereal bar, scratch it off. It was like basic things. And then eventually I made this other list. And I remember writing down, I had to make myself remember things that I had loved to do before I had pain. Because at the time, I didn't care about anything. I literally cared about nothing. I remember I would look at my nieces and nephews who I love on a level I cannot even describe, and I couldn't feel love for them. I just felt numb and black inside. And so at the time, I started writing these things down that I knew that I loved. And I would make myself every day do one thing on that list. It was so basic. You love flowers. So I would make myself go pick flowers. You love sunsets. And I didn't give a shit about sunsets at that time. I would go sit and I'm like, you love this. This is pretty. And I would say out loud the things that I know to be true, but didn't feel. And what was so beautiful, I remember all of a sudden, it became this great lesson for me that I didn't even know I was doing at the time, that I think so often in life, we think that the emotion has to be there first before the action. But what I realized in that time is I was always waiting for my pain to be better before I would start living again. And I had to start living to let my pain become less of the defining factor. And I had to choose these things, these actions, go see beautiful things and trust that the emotions around those beautiful things will eventually come. And so at that time, I think we all do it. It's I will be happy once I get this job or this boyfriend or this baby or this house or whatever. We all do it, And for me, it was, I'll be happy once my pain goes away.
So you already know I'm a bit of a science geek, and I'm constantly exploring ways to fill my vitality bucket, optimize my health. But probably like you, I don't have a lot of time, so I'm always on the hunt for simple things that I can do or eat or drink that make a disproportionate difference and are backed by science. One of those things are omega-3s. You've probably heard about them, and there's really good reason. It's kind of mind-boggling how many systems in our bodies this simple substance can benefit, from reducing inflammation and joint pain and muscle soreness to boosting memory, lowering the potential risk of everything from diabetes to arthritis to heart disease. So how do you get it? Well, supplements can be great, but they rarely include enough pure omega-3s to really make a difference. So I'm always on the hunt for the perfect omega-3 supplement. And when the crew at Omex3 Ultra Pure reached out, I was actually really impressed by their commitment to making something that truly raised the bar. Omex3 Ultra Pure is the purest, most concentrated omega-3 supplement on the market. Contains nearly 94% high-quality omega-3s. You got all the benefits and the peace of mind, but at the end of the day, it's all about how it makes you feel, right? So you got to try it for yourself. Omex3 comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee, so you have plenty of time to try it and really feel the Omex difference. And this is super cool. As a Good Life Project listener, you can now try a box of Omex3 Ultra Pure for free. Just go to tryomex.com/goodlife today and get a box of Omex3 Ultra Pure for free. That's tryomex.com/goodlife to get your free box of Omex3. Try omex.com/goodlife. Terms and conditions apply.
But I had to choose certain emotions knowing that my pain wouldn't go away.
And not even I'll be happy, but I'll start to re-engage with life once my pain goes away.
Absolutely. That was my mindset. And I remember my brother saying the most basic thing, but he was like, babe, you can lay in your bed and hurt all the time, or you can get out of bed and live your life and serve people and hurt. And what's so amazing, what's your better option? And what's so amazing is when you do those things, you're not going to be thinking about your pain like you do when you're living in your bed. But for for the longest time, I didn't do anything that I thought would make my pain worse. So I didn't travel. I didn't dance. I didn't do the things that I love so much because I knew it would make my pain feel worse. But what I know now is like when I lived in my bed, that's all I thought about was my pain. That's it. It consumed every thought in my mind. And now, like sitting with you right now, I'm not thinking about my ever-present pain, because I can focus on things that are like life-giving. And then like, yeah, like it's there. It doesn't go away, but I'm able to like push it back enough to be engaged. Whereas if I'd stayed on my heating pad this morning, which all parts of me wants to pretty much every morning when I get up, because it's really hard to get up, and I make myself go in the day so that it comes at a really big cost, so I don't sleep much. But when I show up and I like actually live life, it fills me on a level that I can't even it gives me life, And so I started seeing glimmers of that. Like I remember having this image of myself getting glasses for the first time in second grade and walking outside and being like, Mom, look at the sky, freaking the fook out. And all of a sudden, probably like a month or two into weaning myself off drugs, that's what started happening. Like I started feeling that awe again when I was showing up to life. Like all of a sudden I had this new lens in my eyes to actually see life. And I remember hearing this quote at that time that changed me. And it's this Khalil Gibran, I probably said that wrong, quote that the deeper sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. And I remember reading that and I literally just got the chills saying it again. Like, I will get to experience joy on such a deep level because of the level of pain that I know. And that became a truth that when I heard that, I knew it was true. But I also knew something deep in me also knew that it became my choice. Because like, I think with pain, you can choose one or two routes. Like I had lived on this one lane for, at that point, almost 7 years of being completely defined by pain, by becoming a complete victim of it. I was it made me harder and it made me a pessimist and it made me feel so sorry for myself and just a full victim. To what this pain can do, like all of a sudden, when I started choosing life and choosing joy and choosing to celebrate the beautiful things around me, it became this both and, because I realized I had numbed myself for so long with all the drugs that I'd also numbed every good thing. But when I actually had to feel my pain to the depth that it was and the loss of my dad, I'd been numb really even to that loss too, So when I completely felt it, but it was staying present and choosing life in the midst of it, all of a sudden, everything was so much prettier. Like the sky felt so much more beautiful. My friends meant so much more to me. My family was like, it was just this beautiful both and, I was holding the depth of my pain and the depth of the goodness in my life in both hands at all times. And that became my like driving force. I was like, I also decided something in me was like, my job is going to be to seek out beauty and goodness in everything I possibly can. And not only to see it, but to share it. And I don't know, maybe someone had taught me that way before, or I don't know where that necessarily came from, but it was just in me. And I knew that I had to do it to be functional. And at first it was because I was trying to believe it. And then like the emotion came and I believed it on every part of me. And like, it became my drug almost. Like that became my medication to like show up to life and to see the goodness that is, and the brokenness. Like I wasn't avoiding either of them anymore. I wasn't trying to numb either of them. And I also was so much more aware of the pain around me. Like I told you earlier, before when I was a kid, I just thought everyone's life was good and they were doing great and they were happy and they went home to a life they enjoyed. And all of a sudden I actually saw people, and my pain and being alert to my pain also gave me empathy. in a way that I'd never known because I'd been numb to everything, or I was delusional, And so all of a sudden, like, I think one of the greatest gifts that pain gives you is like, you're going to be able to walk with people on a level that you could, like, now I can walk with people who are dealing with, loss of a parent, or emotional, physical, spiritual pain, or, what ended up happening, like for me, like divorce. I know that pain. My marriage came to an end, and it felt like a death, and it was heartbreaking. And it happened about 6 weeks after I weaned myself off of all the medication. And thank God I was off all the medication, because everything in me wanted to shut down again and isolate and check out. And I was like, no, like, you have to get up and you have to choose life. And I had to go through the motions that I did, 5 months before that. Once again, like, scratch off 8 a.m., and get out of bed, make the bed. And this cool thing happened in that time, because I was lucky enough to be in Nashville and surrounded by a community that believed in me before I did. And they'd seen my homes that I had decorated and told me I was creative and told me I was good at it. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I had no money and no way to support myself. And I was scared to death, and I didn't have the luxury of fear. And so I'm like, other people told me I was good at decorating, so I guess I'll tell people I'm a decorator, even though I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm a fraud, and my brother paid for me to get a website built, and I used only photos from my homes because that's all I'd ever done. And I started saying yes to things, and I started an Instagram account, and I started just posting the things that I was doing, that list of things that I'd love to do before I had pain. I started doing those things and posting about it. And I was I would gather flowers and give them away, and I would host people because I love hosting. I love bringing people together. And people started eventually asking me to help them with their things, And I don't know if it's because they liked what they saw, or they felt sorry for me, or they thought that's what I already did for a living. I don't know, but I just had to say yes, And it was really interesting because probably 8 months into that, I started having people that didn't know me following me on Instagram. And all of a sudden I started getting those messages that you were talking about earlier, like, your life looks so perfect and this is so beautiful. I wish I got to do that.
Right,
and
because all they're seeing is the beautiful hosting and the design. And they're like, oh my gosh, I wish I were you.
Exactly. And it honestly, those comments made me feel so sick to my stomach, because it would just literally shoot me right back to living in my bed, looking on Facebook, thinking, I wish I was out playing with my children and not laying here suffering.
So it's like you had become the illusion for other people now.
Exactly. And I was like, I need to give people the full context, because they're only seeing the beautiful things that I was choosing to focus on, but I had not shared about. I was going through a divorce. I miss my dad every day. I live in constant chronic pain that has gotten worse every year since I can remember it. I need to give them a full context for my joy, because the idea that I would do to someone else what I felt without having the full context made me sick. And so I ended up on my website writing out a full, literally everything that had happened. I wrote out, every gory detail of basically what a nightmare I had been. But also I wanted to share this message of there is hope for you too. Whatever trauma, pain, heartache you're living through right now, this does not have to be the end of your story. There is hope, and I feel it now, And so I ended up writing it all out, and I was terrified to hit publish because I felt naked. I had just literally told all the gory details. And what ended up happening, I think so often we think people are going to we're going to push them away by the gross things inside of us. And it does the exact opposite. When you're not in the victim mode of it, right? So I share everything and the hope that comes along with it. And people started writing me, I just every day would just be bombarded with messages from people who are suffering. And it fueled me in a way that I was I realized in that time why I was here. And I didn't know it up to that point. I always thought when people would ask me when I was a kid what I wanted to be when I grew up, I'd be a mom, unapologetically. I am here to be a mother, and I will be really good at it, and don't question me with it, And that's not my story, And all of a sudden I was like, wait, like the reason I'm here is to share this message of hope in the midst of suffering. And knowing that it could help other people made my pain feel so purposeful. And so I wanted to share that message in the most authentic way I possibly could. I just wanted to enter in with people and love people. And because in a lot of selfish ways, it helped me not focus on myself and know that it could be helpful for other people. Like my pain is not in vain. That's what it gave me, which it doesn't take away that like, I hate that I wake up hurting every second. I don't want to hurt all the time. Like, I wish my dad was here, I don't wish divorce on anyone. No one grows up wishing to be divorced one day. Like, that is not the story I had lined up for my life. Like, I long to be a mother, and those were not my story. But knowing that my pain could be a way to bring hope for other people that didn't think they could get out of bed. Like literally on the car ride over here, I'm like, I try to respond to every email and it doesn't happen. Like it means a lot to me, So I'm like responding in the cab on the way over. And like, I still can't not get emotional about it. Cause I'm like, this morning I felt so sick from pain, and I'm like, but if for some reason, for some crazy cosmic reason that I don't quite understand, like this pain makes this sweet little girl in Brazil feel like she can get out of bed, like that'll never not feel like a complete honor to me, like that is so, I wish that people could have the goodness and the grace and the joy that comes from pain without having to experience what I experience. But I know that is a crucial part of the process. And I wouldn't have this life that I love so deeply that gives me so much joy and is so fulfilling if all of those things had not happened. Like, if my husband had not left, like I would have never started my business ever. And that's not to say in this Pollyanna-ish way, like, and it's great. Like it fucking sucks and it's painful and broken. And I don't wish it on anyone, I wish they could have the goodness without the suffering, but I don't think it's possible, not to the depth that it comes, and I can like, with full conviction, say I wouldn't change one thing that happened. I hate it in a lot of ways, but like something about embracing it and not in the victim sense, like it's not who I am. Like my pain is a piece of my story, but it's not who I am anymore. And I love that my greatest compliment I ever get is when my friends tell me they forget I'm hurting all the time. Like that gives me so much joy because I don't lead with it anymore. It's just a piece of me and I'm honest about it. Obviously, we're sitting here talking about it. I share my story for a living, but it's no longer my defining factor. It's just a piece and it's a piece that's made me better, like truly better.
Yeah. So what is your defining factor now?
Gosh, I mean, I think that's ever changing. Like I want to be known as someone who's loved well, who's loved people well. I don't know that I have a defining factor, but if there was something I would want people to feel when they leave me is they feel cared, seen, loved, and know that they matter. And I know I don't always do that well, but that's my goal. That's my hope. Like before I left, like I wanted people to feel sorry for me because it justified my lifestyle. Now I want people to leave feeling seen, cared for, special, and know that they fucking matter because they do. Like they matter. Everyone matters, And I think that's what I would want to be known for, period. That's what matters to me, I don't know.
So as we hang out here, Good Life Project. So if I offer that phrase out to you, sitting here with what you've been through, with what you're feeling emotionally from a hope and service and love standpoint, what you're feeling physically, if I offer the question, what does it mean to you to live a good life? What comes up?
I love that question. For me, why my life feels full and so good and so rich is because I'm surrounded by a community of humans that I love so deeply and love me so well. I'm doing work that feels purposeful, that makes my pain feel purposeful. And I'm no longer scared to say yes to things that are life-giving. Like, it means I get to do road trips with my friends and know that it's going to come at a cost and I'll probably throw up that night from pain, but that it's so worth it. And the things that I get to see and the people I get to meet and the cultures I get to experience and the food I get to eat, like, it is so life-giving to me. Like, last night I'm sitting around this living room watching Stranger Things in a room full of humans that I love so deeply. I can't imagine not having them in my life. And I know that I would have never met one of them if my story wasn't what it was. Like, if my husband hadn't left, if I didn't have this pain, if I wasn't doing the work, like, I met all of them after. They are such a life-sustaining gift to me. Like, they are my lifeline. They give me so much. They make me want to be better. They make me think about things that I wouldn't necessarily think about. They make me want to stand up for things that I would have been scared to talk out about. Like, they make me better. And they make my life good. Like, and also, I want to be my best version that I can add the goodness back to them too. You know, it's like we have this mutual exchange that's so beautiful and so rich. Like, I can't express to you, I mean, there's still a lot of loss and pain and suffering in my life, you know, but it's so good. It is so sweet. Like, I don't wish to have anyone else's life. I love my life so much, even the hard stuff, because it makes the good stuff so much better. Like, there's this part of me that I know. Last year, Jed and I did this trip to Vermont, and one morning I saw that one of the longest zip lines, like, literally in the world, is in Stowe, Vermont. And I was like, dear God, we have to do this. So we bundle up, we leave the crew. He comes with me and it's freezing. And I knew that it would be physically, like, it's physically taxing to do this. Like, you have to hold your weight up and it's whatever. I knew that probably the next day I wouldn't be able to walk. But there's something in me that I think is such a gift that I was given because of this pain, where because my pain is worse each year, that I don't know what it's going to look like 5 years from now. I don't know that I'm going to be able to do a lot of the things that I do right now. And if things keep going the way they are, there's a good chance I won't. Not in this pessimistic way, but just realistically, there's a good chance I won't. And so in the sweetest way, it makes me appreciate all of those things so much more on such a deep level. And they feel like such a gift because I just don't know, you know, that I'll ever be able to do these things again. And so it makes me want to freaking suck the marrow out of, like, every experience and appreciate it and enjoy it and live it, like, despite my pain. And not only despite it, but because of it, you know, it makes it that much better, richer, more full, and more exciting and more joyful. Like, this pain has I truly believe it's made me so much better. And it's made my life so good. And I wouldn't change it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening, and thanks to our fantastic sponsors. If you love this show, please support them. They help make the podcast possible. Check out the links in today's show notes. And don't forget, by the way, to grab your spot at this year's Camp GLP. It's an amazing way to step out of your life every day, out of the frenzy, and just spend time reconnecting with who you really are, meeting amazing new friends, and learning a ton along the way. And if you've been waiting, be sure to register now to lock in your $200 super early bird discount. Learn more at goodlifeproject.com/camp. See you next week.